Shane, I think we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We have a couple of different agencies on here with us today to go over some VR and independent living services and how we can kind of work together to optimize both of those services for mutual clients. So just a couple of reminders as we get started. Please make sure that your microphone is on mute and that if you have any kind of visible background distractions, that you turn your video off as well. If you're experiencing any lag in your video or having a hard time hearing, it could be the internet connection on your end. So try turning off your video. That might help a little bit. Also, I think Bernie shared in the chat box the call-in number. So if you're having a lot of issues with your sound or video, you can try calling in and listening into the presentation. And I'll put that number in the chat box again here in just a few minutes. If you have any questions or comments during the training, please put them in the chat box and I'll be monitoring that and I'll pass those along to the presenters as we break for questions after each person presents. I am recording this and the recording will be available following the training. So if you want to show it to any of your other staff or coworkers, or if you just want to watch it again, it will be available. Just let me know if you're not a state staff. I can send you the link to the YouTube link that the recording will be on. And then if you're a state staff, you can find it on the DHS intranet training page. And then last, I do have a attendance form that I'm asking everybody to please complete. Everybody I will ask to fill out page 1, and that's just going to be general attendance. And then on there, you can also request a certificate of attendance if you need that for any of your accrediting bodies. And then also CRC credits will be available too. So you'll find the instructions for that as well. Then I'm going to share that link here in the chat box, and then I'll share the call-in information. And anything else that you guys need, just feel free to shoot me a private chat if you need to, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. And then I'm going to be sharing a couple other handouts in there as well, so just keep an eye on that. And then I think, am I turning it over to you, Bernie?
Yes, you are. And why don't you also just put in the latest version of the agenda, put that in there too. Good afternoon, everyone. We have different people presenting this afternoon on the VR and IL, how we can work together. And Shana, I want to thank you for helping arrange this and setting this up. We will, first of all, and we have a bunch of Jennifers on here, so it does get confusing all the time. So I will be saying last names on this. So Jennifer Lewis and I will be going through the VR and IL portion of it. And then the two centers for independent living will present on their coverage area and their offices. And then we're going to have the two centers talk about, there's 4 groups of services. Independent Living Choices will talk about the core services, and then they'll talk about the HOMAD, AT, and RAMPS, which is all kind of similar. And then Western Resources for Independent Living is going to talk about the TAD. And then there's a group of what we call other services. And then Jennifer Lewis is going to talk about the ADLS clients, assistance with ADLS clients. Jordan Trumbo is going to talk about common VR services and also how providers are utilized and paid. I'm going to talk about when we deal with joint IL VR clients. And then we're going to do a breakout where literally about 10 groups of about 10 people in each group. And we're going to have them talk about how can sales assist with VR clients and vice versa, how can VR assist with IL clients. And we'll come back together as a large group. So we do a 2-hour schedule for this. And I'm going to share my screen, and Jennifer Lewis and I are going to tag team here on this. presentation. Can you see the screen? Shana, nod your head. Okay, you see the PowerPoint. Okay, good. Oh, okay. Anyway, what we did is we broke it out into, there is a lot of similarities with the VR and the IL system, but there's also some differences with the VR and the IL system. Both of the programs are in the Rehabilitation Act, and they've been together in the Rehabilitation Act all the way back into the 70s, when I think when IL was first started. VR is Title I, and IL is called Title VII of the Rehabilitation Act. Jen?
Okay, so let me just, sorry, Bernie. Both of them have state plans. Both programs have a state plan where that dictates what services they're going to provide and how they will provide those services.
Oh, you should have done the one on the right. Sorry.
Sorry, Bernie, I'm messing up your rotation already.
Yeah, do the one under what is different.
Okay, so difference between them is VR is in the Department of Education and the Office of Special Education. IL is in the Department of Health and Human Services under the Administration of Community Living.
Okay. I will do the one with both have state plans, and I did a little bit more detail than Jennifer did on another slide, and we'll go back to this other one. But in the VR, VR state plan is part of the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, and I've got the link there. And you can find this on Department of Labor's website for the full unified plan, where it has all 4 titles. It's almost 300 pages long. But you can find the specific DRS section of the state plan on a DRS website right on the main screen, and you can find the SBVI one on their home screen. I do recommend that you take a look at them. There are specific goals and objectives onto there for each specific division into there. And Jen, I'll let you talk about the IL state plan.
So the state plan for independent living, it's a 3-year plan that is developed by the SILC, state staff, board support, and that goes into the goals, our objectives, and our funding. We just had our new state plan renewed in October here. So that's a 3-year plan. We're just starting with new goals. The goals that the committee decided for this current 3-year period is to increase awareness of independent living services in South Dakota. There's a variety of objectives that go into that. Ensuring people with disabilities in South Dakota have equal access to IL services, and then that the SILC and SILS are going to identify any systematic issues with housing and transportation.
Okay, before you get into council, I'm going to make up comments, okay? Both IL and VR have councils, statewide councils. There's a lot of similarities between them. For the VR, for DRS Council, and for the Independent Living, Statewide Independent Living Council, that is contracted with Black Hills Special Service Cooperative, and Colette Wagner is the board support, we'll call that. Because South Dakota has 2 VR agencies, that means our VR programs both have councils, and their council is handled directly by their state office staff. Becky Bloom plays a significant role in helping with the board arrangements into there. And so that's just one thing important to remember onto there, that we really do have 3 councils involved into here. So I'll let Jen explain a little bit about the councils.
Like Bernie said, the councils meet on a quarterly basis. They consist of people from across the state of South Dakota, and the majority of our voting members are people with disabilities. We share board support with Black Hills Special Services. Colette Wagner is our contact there. The council is the overall of the Centers for Independent Living. you guys, a lot of the information that you guys collect and gather, all of it actually is submitted back to the council, and they review that information and they make recommendations and give feedback on directions that you guys should be going or looking at going, and how to increase services for people throughout South Dakota. Their website is also listed there. You can access their minutes and agendas and things like that from that portal.
Okay. I'll let you go ahead with the fourth one down on the left.
So both receive federal funding from federal agencies. And what that outlines is each program gets federal funding from different sources. Our federal funding has rules and guidelines on how we can use it. And part of that goes in, the agencies figure out where it can be used for.
We do the next one too?
And then both provide services for people with disabilities.
And just to add on to a little bit onto there, that it's for the purpose of course, VR's employment. IL1 is for anyone with independent living needs. Both programs do have an application and they have an eligibility requirements. They have service plans and they have closures. So very similar in those ways. Are you waiting for me, Jan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Independent living, the eligibility requirements, I just want to address a little bit of difference there. I'm going to call it more liberal or more open and allowing more visual type observations, and the option for also for an IL waiver versus IL plan. And let me explain that. If a person comes in with in a wheelchair, they can document the eligibility based on that visual observation that there's a mobility impairment. It has to be the impairment is. And there's other ways they can get documentation. If they're a VR client, they can also get that documentation, or also if they're Social Security onto there. But they do have more open opportunities for that observation. But when you get into areas of mental illness or learning disabilities, those things are not quite as observable. So it has to be where it is on the impairment that's being observed. I do want to mention one thing, why there is an IL waiver and an IL plan. At one time, the independent living program was under the Rehabilitation Services Administration until this very last reauthorization of the Rehab Act did get moved. And the IL plan has very similar requirements to the VR plan. You know, you list who the service, the vendor, the goals, has annual reviews involved into there. And the waiver is if a person needs just a very quick service, needs assistive device or something, just like a one service item that they don't want to go through all that process, they have that choice of doing a waiver, which will simplify the process quite a bit. Right, John?
Correct. So both programs use different case management systems, and we both have our different federal reporting. Within the IL programs, you guys use NetSil, or it just slipped my head. Within the VR program, we use VR Faces, which is an internal state program. Those programs have within them the requirements for each that is mandatory for our reporting. IL services are also contracted out to the Centers for Independent Living. The Centers for Independent Living cover the state of South Dakota. There's 2 centers that do that. The VOC Rehab staff are state staff. They're certified vocational rehabilitation counselors. There's about over 65 rehab service staff, and 7 SBVI field staff. SBVI is the services for blind and visually impaired.
Both programs are required to provide information on the client assistance program. VR program has where a few more places are required, like even enclosures with independent living may not, but both cases of programs are required to provide that information. And I do want to mention there are other program staff that are involved with vision services, service blind and visually impaired, and rehabilitation services. And I do want to mention that when we've talked a lot about this, it's been the IL services from the Center for Independent Living, and we're not going to be talking a whole lot about the independent living within SBVI because they handle that internally. So they probably have a good handle on the VR and the IL coordination into there. But in the program specialists we have in the Vision Rehab Services, we have Miss Katie Grant, who's a transition specialist. We have Shayna Eben, who is our deaf services and our training specialist. We have Jessica Hovland, who is Q&A and support specialist, handles a lot of our case management system. And of course, you know, Jennifer Lewis. We got Kim Ludwig, who's our business specialist. We have Jordan Trimbo, who's our policy development. And then Service the Blind and Visually Impaired has Ray, and he is with, he is the Randolph Shepherd program, and they got Sandy Neihart, who is SBVI independent living specialist into there. So I hope I didn't forget anyone on there. But that's kind of an overview of the VR and the IL systems into there. And I guess one thing I want to talk about in the presentation, there we got different presenters. So if you have a question at this point in time on the topic we presented, we will pause after each of these groups of presentations versus instead of just waiting at the very end. Or like I said, if you want to put your comments in the chat, this would be the time to do it. And I think there's been some comments into there, but I don't know if there are any that are questions. I don't see any that are questions on what Jennifer Lewis and I presented so far. Otherwise, what we will do, we will move forward with the Centers for Independent Living presenting on their coverage area. And give me a second to bring up a map and then turn it over to Jen Redbear first to talk about Western Resources for Independent Living. I think Jen had a, Jen, do you want me to show the PowerPoint of your locations and staff?
You can, that's fine. I didn't put the counties on each of those, but I will.
Let me just drop that into the chat.
Okay.
And then I'll bring up the other one.
Okay.
So give me a second to do that. How do I do this? Give me a second. I'm not as handy as Shane is on this stuff. Okay, I put that in there, and then I'll bring up the map. Just give me a second to get it to turn. I got to figure out how it turns. Go ahead if you want to start talking about your locations and your offices, and I give the names of the staff.
Okay. My name is Jen Redbear. I'm the ED here for Western Resources for Independent Living. I'll start out with our main office, which is Rapid City, and the ILS that Tina Meyer is our independent living specialist out of the Rapid City office. And we've hired Destiny Hartford to start as an independent living specialist. She started last week. She's also doing admin as well. So we're going to slowly get her into that position. So we now have 2 independent living specialists in Rapid City. And the counties that are served in the Rapid area would be Pennington, Custer, Fall River, Jackson, and Meade. Jackson County is actually shared with the Rapid City office and the Pierre office. Moving on with Spearfish office, which is located in Spearfish. Linda Williams is our independent living specialist there. The counties covered in that area would be Lawrence, Butte, Harding, and Perkins. I think I'm okay. And then our third office location is our Pierre office. The independent living staff that is in Pierre is Candy Hackett. And the county served in that office, Hughes, Stanley, Sully, Millette, Jones, Lyman, Hawken, Tripp, and then Jackson, which is shared with the ILS in the Rapid office as well. That is.
Okay, thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
I did put a copy of this into the chat, and also a copy of more specific of the contact information of those offices, that a document from WRL also. So, and then Matt, are you going to cover the office locations and the staff name for ILC?
I will. So I'm Matt Kane. I work for Independent Living Choices out of our Sioux Falls office. Just kind of a little bit of background on our agency. We were started as Prairie Freedom Center for Independent Living back in 1982. And then we actually merged what was Opportunities for Independent Living out of Aberdeen a while back, and then changed our name to Independent Living Choices. And then more recently, we have taken over the services and federal grants to provide services on the 9 tribal nations, which was Native American Advocacy Program. So by that map that we provided, you can see in the colored counties, those are all the counties that Independent Living Choices serves. And then in those gray counties are kind of the counties that Western Resources currently serves. So both centers are tasked to provide the 5 core services, which are advocacy, independent living skills training, information and referral, peer counseling, and transition services. And transition services not only includes moving people out of institutions or nursing homes, but also youth transition. So we currently have 10 offices. With those offices, we have an IL supervisor that supervises the independent living specialists out of our Sioux Falls office, which is our main office. And then we have another supervisor that supervises the independent living specialists out of our expansion offices. That IL supervisor out of our Sioux Falls office is Carol Rockwell. And then the one that supervises the independent living specialists out of our expansion offices is Jenny Hallen. And Bernie, I provided kind of a breakdown of that as well as with our offices, who provide services there, the contact information in the counties. I'll go through those, but I think Shana was going to put those in, or have you put those in as well?
Looking for it. Shana must have it. All right, I don't know.
First off is our Aberdeen office, and our Aberdeen office, out of that office is our independent living specialist is Allison Schmidt, and she serves the counties of Brown, Day, Edmonds, Marshall, and McPherson, and then also serves the Sisseton Wahpeton tribal nation. In our Brookings office, along with the IL supervisor, which is Jenny Hallen, Our IL specialist is Sarah Lippert, and she serves the counties of Brookings, Kingsbury, Lake, and Minor. In our Chamberlain office, we have J.C. Halverson. She serves the counties of Aurora, Brule, Buffalo, Charles Mix, Douglas, and Gregory. And then she also serves Crow Creek, Lower Brule, and Yankton tribal nations. In our Huron office, we have Amy Duxbury. She serves the counties of Beetle, Hand, Hyde, Falk, and Spink. In our Martin office, which is the office that we opened when we took over providing services on the 9 tribal nations, we have Rachel Sturkle and Cheyenne Kolb. They serve the counties of Bennett, Jackson, Ogallala, Lakota, and Todd. And then they also serve Pine Ridge and Rosebud tribal nations. In our Mitchell office, we have 2 staff. Those staff are Kathy Tupper and Renee Gaddis. They serve the counties of Davison, Hanson, Gerald, and Sanborn. In our Mobridge office, we have Madison, Maine. She serves the counties of Campbell, Corson, Dewey, Potter, Walworth, and Ziebach, and then also serves the Cheyenne River and Standing Rock tribal nations. Out of our Sioux Falls office, which is where Carol Rockwell, the other IL supervisor, is, we have a few independent living specialists. They are Amanda Lefevre, Kathleen Zapata, Denise Reed, Doretti Koji, Nancy Wilde, and Vicki Myros. And those independent living specialists serve the counties of Lincoln, McCook, Minnehaha, Moody, and Turner. And then they also serve the Flandreau Santee tribal nation. In our Watertown office, we have Janet Guest and Mary Beth Grape, and they serve the counties of Clark, Coddington, Dual, Grant, Hamlin, and Roberts. And then also, along with Aberdeen, serve the Sisseton Wahpeton tribal nation. And then last but not least is our Yankton office. Out of our Yankton office, we have Courtney Samantel, and she serves the counties of Bonham, Clay, Hutchinson, Union, and Yankton. And that kind of gives you a breakdown of our offices, who provide services, what counties. And I believe Shana or Bernie will give you a sheet that probably gives you a little bit better follow-up after this if you need to contact one of our people. It should be that even if you call the wrong office, we should be able to refer you to the right person, or that staff person, even though they may not be the right person, can help you out.
Yeah, Shana did put it in the chat already, so that's where you can access that file. So thank you, Jennifer Bear, and thank you, Matt, for description of your locations, your offices, and your staff introductions. The next part, we're going to have the SILs talk about those services, and we broke those services in the groups because core services from one SIL is the same description as core services provided by the other group. So when ILC first talks about their 2 areas, Western Resources for Independent Living also does the same service group into there. We just we didn't want people to listen to the presentation twice. So at this point, is it Colleen and Jenny Howland are going to present on their 2 areas, the core services, and then the home AT ramps?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you have a slide you want to put up, or you just talk about it, or do you want Repos to put it up?
Jenny will share the screen with our PowerPoint. So thanks, Bernie. I appreciate us having the opportunity. I really appreciate the opportunity to share this information about independent living choices and the things that we do. As everyone has said, if you have questions, you can put it in the chat box, or if you have a really kind comment that you want to put in the chat box, we'll let you put kind comments in there as well. at Independent Living Choices, we follow the independent living philosophy. And what that means, as you probably all know, is that individuals with disabilities are experts on their own services, what they need. We as independent living specialists, or I'm actually the COO of Independent Living Choices, and Jenny is, as Matt said, one of the supervisors. She's the program director. And then our independent living specialists go out and do the really hard work. And they know that if you are an individual with a disability, you are the expert on what you need. And we follow that philosophy, and we take that philosophy very seriously. So that means if you are an individual, you should have, with a disability, you should have the opportunity to decide where you want to live and how you want to live, if and when you want to work, and the manner in which you want to interact in your communities. So individuals with disabilities should have the same opportunity to make decisions about their services in those services that affect their daily life and their independence. And so at Independent Living Choices, all of our services are participant driven. As Bernie and Matt both mentioned, we are asked to cover our 5 core services, as well as our HMAD programs, assistive technology, and RAMs. We have listed right here what our 5 core services are, and they're the same for WIRL as well. So it's advocacy, independent living skills, information and referral, peer support, and transition. When we talk about advocacy, there's a couple different avenues how we help or how we view advocacy. So self-advocacy is probably pretty explanatory just in and of itself. But that's where we assist individuals that we work with in developing the skills they need to advocate for themselves. We do this in a number of ways, through our summer transition program, one-on-one. Actually, advocacy is probably something that we do in every service that we offer, because we think it is that important. As you can see, the things that we have listed, for instance, we assist people applying for SSI and SSDI benefits. But if you have ever been on those phone calls, you know that as an outside person, you can't be the one that answers the questions. It is the participant or the person that is applying that answers those questions. And we provide the support then that they can advocate for themselves. We hope to give them the skills that they're able to do that. We also provide information on guardianships and conservatorships. And we do that because, as I said before, or the individuals with disabilities are the ones that they're their experts. Do they need a guardianship? Do they need a conservatorship? If someone files that, should they advocate for themselves? What should we do? So we provide them with that information and hopefully develop those skills so they can answer those questions. We also provide an opportunity for participants, that's what we call the people that we serve, the chance for them to give input about our services, about what has happened. We do that in a couple of ways. Every time we close a file, we send a survey, or most of the times we do, to just say what went well, what didn't go well. How can we improve things? We also have participant input groups that meet twice a year so that the participants can tell us what they think. And we really value that feedback. And we really do look at that feedback and see if we need to make changes in our services. So in general, we also do just general advocacy, self-advocacy, teaching individuals those skills. Advocacy also includes us advocating with participants. And for instance, there are times when a participant might be a victim of discrimination or harassment or other unfair treatment. And so we stand beside them. We advocate with them, we support them. Maybe we give them their options. What are your options if you've been a victim of discrimination and harassment? And we might provide those options. We might send them to a website. We might tell them what fair housing means. We might explain that, and we might, stand beside them when they make a call to their landlord, or they talk to somebody about at work who has been discriminating and harassing against them. We also attend IEP meetings. And sometimes we do that just as to provide information. Sometimes we do that as we advocate with the participants about what their next steps might be and how ILC can be of service to them as well. We also walk beside our participants when an accommodation or modification is needed, either in employment or in housing. Oftentimes, as probably everybody on the call knows, it's difficult to know when and how to ask for an accommodation in employment. How to do it, what's the proper way, who do I contact, those kinds of things. And so we try to help them with that. There are times when a participant might ask one of us to come to a meeting with an employer to talk about an accommodation. There might be a time when we're on a phone call with a landlord to talk about a modification to a residence that we have or that they have. We also have some forms that they fill out when they deal with landlords about modifications that are being made to their property. And so we provide advocacy in those ways. We teach individual advocacy skills as well as advocating with participants.
Thanks, Colleen. The next core service that both ILC and WRIL provide are independent living skills training. And this is hands-on training with the participant and the specialist to learn these skills with the ultimate goal being that they will develop the knowledge and the skill to be able to do this on their own without ILC or without WRIL and the specialists. So some of those things look like cooking, cleaning, laundry, self-care and personal hygiene, shopping, budgeting, sorting mail, scheduling appointments, organizing, developing social skills, and providing opportunities for leisure and volunteer activities. And of course, this is just a short list. There can be many more. And like Colleen said, it gets, it's what the participant is looking for, what their goals are for their independent living. Our next core service is information and referral. So this is connecting people with resources that are available to them to assist them in living independently. Some of these resources might be referring them to vocational rehabilitation services or LTSS, CSD, SBBI, some counseling services, transportation services, food resources, home repairs, healthcare and dental. Information and referral can be provided with ILC or the SIL calling on behalf of the participant. Sometimes we do work together with them so that we can gain some information and knowledge and then share that with the participant. Other times we just give the participant the contact information and they like to do their own calling and information gathering. And another core service is our peer support. So we provide opportunities for participants to engage with others in either small or large groups or on an individual basis. This can happen with individual peer support. We do have a one-on-one peer visitor program, which we have trained peer visitors who participate in volunteering and calling other participants within ILC to share in that knowledge or experience of having a disability, learning community resources and things like that. This can be provided via the phone, mail, email, in person, or virtual. Right now, I can speak for ILC, and we are offering all of our peer support groups in a virtual setting or where we can. So our peer support groups can be disability specific, such as a brain injury and Parkinson's, age specific with youth or young adult, 16 and up, cross disability for all ages. We also have a wellness group and dining out groups.
Another core service that we have that we're really proud of is our transition services. And transition can occur in 3 different ways. The first one Matt talked a little bit about is nursing home transition. And it's when we transition individuals from nursing homes back into their communities. And we think this is so important. As we talked about the independent living philosophy of individuals should have the opportunity to choose where they live. It's really nice when we can help them get back into the community of their choice. Sometimes a person with a disability ends up in a nursing home, let's say in Aberdeen, but they live in Selby. And so they want to transition back to Selby where they've always lived. And so we really appreciate the chance that we have and the opportunity we have to help that person transition back to where they want to live. The second way in which we think transition occurs is when we have nursing home deterrence. And what that means is we provide services in support to individuals who are at risk of entering an institution, but because of the services and supports we provide, they're able to remain in their home community, which, like I said, is so important for so many individuals that we work with. We also have youth transition, and our transition services are really important where we match up with our community partners. We rely on them heavily when we do transition services. And so with our youth transition services, there's a couple areas. First, post-secondary. And that's when a young person has actually left school, completed their secondary education, and so they're no longer in high school. So we offer them assistance, and it might include referral to Voc Rehab. It might include assistance in finding housing or providing independent skills training. Something that transitions them, either they might be in a post-secondary institution, we might help them there, maybe with an accommodation that they need in order to continue to learn, maybe a housing accommodation. And so that's somebody who has completed whatever education they can in high school. We also have youth transition for individuals who are ages 16 to 21. And that's when we provide information and education on how they can transition into adulthood, into that post-secondary life. There are a number of ways in which we offer that program. Some of our offices offer transition programs in the summer of various lengths and times. We have some offices that actually, before COVID hit, would go right into the schools and provide a transition programming during the school year within the school setting. And so we think that's a really important thing. And again, the IEP comes into play there, but those are the ways that we provide transition services.
All right, we have home modifications and assistive devices. So ILC is able to provide some home modifications, assistive devices, and vehicle modifications to allow participants to remain independent, whether this is in their home or communities. Some of the things that we do, and this is just, again, a short list. We can do lift chairs, bathroom modifications, which may look like a high-rise toilet, installing some grab bars, a shower modification for a step-in or roll-in shower. We do hand controls, foot pedals on vehicle modifications and ramps as well. Other things that we've assisted with would be reachers, canes, walkers, talking watches, flashing doorbells, bed shaker alarms, and more. So again, this is just gets unique to what the participant would like and how they'll reach their independent living goals. ILC also provides ramps on a participant's home. So this is a picture of one of the ramps that we've completed, allowing the participant to enter their home and exit safely. And then we've seen this map that was shared of counties served. And these are just a few numbers specific to ILC. So number of nursing home transitions that we've assisted with have been 60 participants. We've assisted in keeping 478 participants in their homes. And our youth transition program participants were 48. We have 31 peer support groups and 41 peer visitors.
When we look at these numbers, they are numbers from our fiscal year. And so these are the totals that were completed in our fiscal year. So our home modification and assistive devices, we were able to help with 628 of those. We installed 31 ramps, like the photo that Jenny showed you. TADs, which are our assistive devices. I think Jenny always describes them as I've fallen and I can't get up. Telephone device, we installed 524 of those during our fiscal year. And one of the other things that we do is that we complete ADA assessments, which means we go out into our communities after we've been asked, and we look at whether the building that they're in is accessible, and then we've completed those assessments, and we did 3 during our fiscal year, and we've done probably 3 more since that time. And so those are numbers that we're really proud of. And we, when you think of 628 HMAD type projects, we have really made a difference in a lot of people's lives. And so we are so glad to be able to share this information. I think we have one more number, Jenny, that I'd like to share with them too. No.
Nope.
We don't. So I will just share that with you aloud since we didn't have it on our PowerPoint. But during our last fiscal year, we served 2,380 people. ILC did through its offices. So does anyone have any questions? I don't think there's any in the chat.
No, and I think, and if it's okay with the presenters, it was asked if we could send out the PowerPoints with the information, and we will on that if you're okay with that, unless you object to it and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, we'd be thrilled to have anybody have the PowerPoint that wants it.
Okay, well, thank you, Jenny and Colleen. Again, we had the 2 centers present on the service groups, because each center does, those are numbers may differ, and sometimes their approach or their office locations may be different. So just keep in mind what was presented also applies for Western Resources for Independent Living, of them doing the same services. And they are now going to talk about the telecommunication assistive devices. And then there's a group of other services. So Jen Red Bear, are you covering that one? I think you're muted. There you go.
Okay. I'll talk about the TAD program, the Telecommunication Adaptive Device Program, which ILC provides as well. We currently, it's telephone that we install. Let me go over the eligibility requirement. The individual must have a disability, which prevents them from using a telephone without a telecommunication device. Be a state resident, must have a landline phone service. Now that's very important to have the landline phone service. That's the only way that the device will work. The device for individuals with disabilities is an electrical mechanical device for use with a telephone that enables an individual to communicate through a telephone. If they are having let's say the individual lives alone and they are they're an elderly and they live out in the country. They get the device. It comes with a pendant. Comes with one pendant, and when installing the emergency dialer at their home, they are required to have up to 4 to 6 telephone numbers programmed into the device. And that could be their friends, family, neighbors. 911 is the last option that you want to, program into the phone. And in case this device will help the individual if they fall, have a history of falling, and if they live alone. Once you program the numbers into the device, the individual, we make sure that it's working properly. And then we do a test call. And what it does is once the person presses the emergency button, it starts to call the first number programmed into the device. And when an individual answers from that list of 4 to 6 people programmed into the telephone, they're going to hear a recording. This is Jane. I have a problem. Please press 5 on your phone to talk and listen. And then once they press 5 or any number on their pad, they're connected to the phone, and actually they come up on the speaker on the device, and they can actually hear throughout the whole home what is going on. So if the person has fallen, they're hollering, I'm on the kitchen floor, I've fallen, I can't get up. So the person who's taking the call, friend, family, or neighbor, they are the ones that will make that the initial decision. If they if they're right next door, they'll run over to the house. Anyway, going into deep depth here. But if they're out of state, usually we get a lot of those with the elderly. Their adult children live out of state. So they end up calling 911 for their parent anyway. So this is one of our top 3 services that we provide here at WRIL, is our TAD service, and it is funded through the state TAD program.
Jen, can I add something on there?
Sure.
So people don't get confused with, there's a lot of programs you see advertised on TV that have a monthly cost.
Oh yeah.
And don't get confused that this is a free service to the people. The phone device is free. There's no financial need. And so, but like I said, Jan went through the eligibility requirements of that landline. It's an important requirement into there, where if they do go south for the winter, then they may have to get one of those other devices, or if they don't have a landline and stuff. So.
Yeah, and I believe it only reaches within a 50 feet radius wherever the device is located in the home. So sometimes you could, for their peace of mind, some like to garden. There's times where we've gone out and actually stood where the pen, as far as the pennant would go. So they like that, but they also like that it's free. And all right, that's our TAD program. Let's see, did I miss anything else on that? I don't believe I did.
No, I think you covered it well. Thank you.
Okay, so additional independent living services that are provided are, housing is the other one that we provide here, and ILC also provides. Basically, our housing service is, it's securing accessible, affordable housing for people with disabilities. We have added onto our housing services the SDAP program. That's the Security Deposit Assistance Program. That is a grant through the South Dakota Housing Development Authority in Pierre. And this is just assisting low income individuals with their security deposit. And currently Pennington County is we, that Pennington County, that's the largest number we have that utilizes that program. Actually, all 17 counties that we cover can utilize the Security Deposit Assistance Program. The eligibility is the same for our services, and also we have to follow HUD regulations on that one as well. We have listed employment services is another service that we offer. And I know that gets confusing for VR as well, because that is one of their main services. So what we do when we say we offer employment, we're basically assisting and preparing for that, assisting them in preparing for and succeeding in the labor market, leading to self-sufficiency that coincides with received benefits, increased knowledge and career research, completing applications, resume, just developing interview skills. But if there's more services that they are requesting, then we would refer them over to the Voc Rehab office, and that I believe that's where the job coaching and placement and whatnot is all taking place. So recreational services is another service that we offer, and that is services that assist an individual to identify opportunities in the community that provide meaningful leisure time activities and to learn socialization skills. We have also listed Social Security service. That's one of our other top 3 services that we provide. And again, they ILC did have it listed in their advocacy. We just assist the individuals who apply for SSDI, SSI benefits, and go through the whole list of what is needed for them to do. So they're usually on their goal is usually about 9 months to a year long, just because of the Social Security the Social Security checklist of what is needed in order for them to receive the benefits.
Jen, while you're talking about that, we did have a question that on the Social Security assistance, on what paperwork can IL Center for Independent Living assist with on the Social Security application process?
Well, what we do is after we do the initial first appointment, the intake on doing the CSR, getting that completed, then the paperwork that is needed right away is I should have had one of the ILSs, which would be either Linda or Tina help me with this one, but because I haven't done it for a while. There's a few forms that need to be filled out before, and that's one of the forms is the representative form, which is letting the Social Security representative know that Tina is representing Jane for applying for the benefits. There's also a few other forms. I apologize, Bernie.
That's okay, but also a lot of medical records. I assume are needed into that process.
Well, we have a whole checklist. They have a checklist of what is needed when they after we get the information referral. It is assigned to one of the ILSs. The ILSs calls and they schedule the appointment, and they know that it's for Social Security. applying for Social Security benefits, then the ILS will also give them a list of what they need to provide when they come for their first appointment. Because what they do is they call the Social Security office, and they can schedule their first initial with the Social Security officer by telephone, or they can do the application online on the Social Security website. And I believe we use both of them. One ILS likes to do the phone interviews, just because if the consumer has questions that we can't answer, then the Social Security representative is there to answer those questions. And then after that, once the Social Security representative that is assigned to the individual's claim, they are in direct contact with the ILS as well, because that ILS is their representative. So when they send out the functional report that needs to be filled out and needs to be sent back in within a 10-day period, that is when the ILS will make the phone call to get a hold of the individual, schedule that appointment so they can get the paperwork that is needed in a timely manner. And then once they go through all of this, it's a long process. And once the individual has been awarded the benefits, it's very uplifting to see how excited the consumer is when they receive these benefits, when they start receiving these benefits. So.
Hey, Jen, another question from the chat is, are there other services you can help participants apply for, such as MOD, Medicaid, housing?
We would get a lot of referrals from in the peer office.
And the second part of that is approximately how long does that take?
When we get a referral, the independent living specialist has 3 to 5 days to get in contact with the individual on the referral form to schedule the appointment. And when you talking about MOD and Medicaid, that's something that you want to get filled out right away. We do help with those applications. That's part of that would be under our independent living services, is assist with filling out variety of applications.
Jen, I can jump in too, and you don't have to carry it all for us. ILC, I think ILC and WRIL assist with completing the same kinds of paperwork. And like Jen said, there is, especially with MOD and Social Security, it is quite a lengthy process. So we are working with that participant for a year, sometimes over a year, while they're filling out getting work history reports and daily living reports completed from Social Security, because those usually have about a 10-day return time. But yes, we can do MOD and housing applications. We've helped with maybe working with the Lions Club to get some glasses, different community resources like that. You can always contact a SIL and we could help complete that paperwork.
I believe we had a free dental application process too, with one of the agencies. So you just contact the office and we will definitely give you a list of what can assist you with. Thank you, Jenny, for stepping in.
Yeah.
All right. The next thing is just our outreach, educational, transition services. I would put that in as, you know, the youth transition as well. We haven't done the summer youth transition. I believe you have, the ILC has in the last few years, right? Every year, Jenny?
Yes, yep,
Okay.
ILC has, yep.
Okay.
Jenny or Jen, we have another question in the chat. Can someone speak about the duration of services overall? Once the participant is eligible for IL services, do they have an open file indefinitely, or do they close a person who has accomplished goals?
Once they have accomplished their goals and they don't need any other services with the agent, with WRIL, then they have a successful closure. They are sure welcome to come, you know, to come back if they would like assistance in another service area, another one of our services.
And I want to add on that too, just like VR, a person could have another case later on. A case has an application date, plan date, closure date, and they can come back and have services again. That's very similar to the VR system onto there.
So we do assist individuals across the lifespan. So like Bernie and Jen said, IL services aren't a one and done. Some individuals we're going to see multiple times. They could have a file open and we could close it with goals met, and 1 week later they could call us again and something else might have come up and we would determine them eligible and reopen a file for them. But yes, we do close out files as well once the goals have been accomplished.
And WRIL can assist an individual and ILC can assist them afterward if they choose to move into ILC coverage areas. So
I do think we need to probably move on. I don't know if there were
Okay.
more left areas on the agenda, but I think in general, to summarize, there's a lot of service categories and areas that the Centers for Independent Living's two centers can provide and stuff in there. And so sometimes we do have a crossover with the VR. I do want to have Jordan Humboldt talk about the common VR services and then how providers are utilized. Jordan, you on?
Yep, I'm here. Okay, let me get my screen shared here. Okay. You guys able to see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so like Bernie said, we're moving on from talking about the IL services to now we're talking about common VR services that are provided to be able to ultimately have that discussion about how the independent living centers and how Voc Rehab can work together to serve clients. So, is it gonna go? Sorry, my slides aren't advancing. Give me just a second. There we go. Okay. So I think it's important to talk about kind of what the progression through a VR case looks like. And I'll go through a couple different parts of these. So people do have to apply for services. There is an eligibility determination phase. You have to meet certain criteria to be eligible for our services. In a typical case or an ideal case, we then provide counseling and guidance, which kind of helps determine what the people might need to achieve their goals, what their goals are going to be, different things like that, just kind of a planning stage, if you will. We then do our individualized plan for employment, which is where we usually authorized for services. We then provide services that lead to employment for most. I mean, that's kind of our goal, is to provide employment, and then to case closure, which then, and then in some cases, depending on the person's need, we can provide post-employment services. So after the case is closed, if they need assistance with some additional job training, if they get a promotion or things like that, we can reopen the case and do some kind of minimal services. So that's a nice textbook way that you progress through a VR case. I thought I was being funny when I created the PowerPoint, but also since I knew I was going to be a ways down in the presentation, I thought I would mention that even though the top is what it typically looks like for a VR case, or is again ideal, it tends to look more like the bottom, kind of all over the place. You know, we can make people eligible. They might have a goal, we move forward with it, and for whatever reason, we have to take a step back and look at something else. But I think that that's an important, part to point out, because that really speaks to the way that we are able to individualize our services to meet people's needs. And so it sometimes makes the cases look a little messy, but with our goal of really meeting the people where they're at to help them meet their employment goals, it's important to allow that kind of flexibility. So the eligibility requirements, like I said, people do have to apply for our services. They have to go through an application and an intake process, and then they have to meet certain eligibility criteria to be eligible to receive services from VR. So they have to have a physical or mental impairment. That impairment has to create a substantial impediment to employment. They have to require VR services to obtain or maintain employment in some way. So as long as they meet those criteria, they are eligible for services. Also, if the person is receiving Social Security benefits based on their own disability, they are automatically eligible for our services. Just kind of the justification for that is if Social Security has determined that they have an impairment that's significant enough for them to receive benefits, they probably have an impairment that's significant enough for them to require services from us. So the process looks a little bit different than for those individuals receiving Social Security benefits, but it's a little faster. So common VR services, and I won't read these off here because I will go through into each of them into the slides, but this is just a list of our core VR services. And one thing that I do want to point out at this point is just that all of these services, again, we try and individualize as much as possible to the people that we are working with. So some person or one client's counseling and guidance may look very different from another person's counseling and guidance. One client's pre-ET services could look very different from another person's pre-ET services. It just really depends on where that person is at and what they need to be successful in employment. The other thing is all of these services are done with the goal of helping that person to either obtain skills or obtain employment, or obtain skills that would help them be successful in employment or to gain employment. That's the end goal of all VR services, is just that successful job in the community in competitive integrated employment. So the first service is counseling and guidance. Like I said, this is kind of in general where most of the cases start. It's the foundation of all of our VR services. It helps establish the relationships with clients to help develop those goals. And like I said, identify what they're going to need to be successful with those goals. Again, very, very individualized, and a lot of it happens right at the beginning to do planning for the case, but it continues to happen throughout the case as needed based on the individual's needs. These can be individual meetings with clients. They can be attending team meetings. A lot of times with our transition students, it involves discussions with guardians and kind of helping guardians through different processes. So that counseling and guidance can look a lot of different ways based on the person's needs. Counseling and guidance is provided to everybody that is eligible. We'll talk a little bit. There are some services that can only be required if people meet certain requirements, but everybody gets counseling and guidance if they are eligible for VR services. With COVID, we've had to expand how we're able to provide these services to people. So traditionally, this was done in-person meetings in our offices. That was just kind of the standard. With COVID and social distancing restrictions, you know, we had to get creative with that, and we have expanded to where these can now be done over the phone. They can be done via text. They can be done virtually using Teams, Zoom, or other platforms. And so that, again, that counseling and guidance can occur in a lot of different platforms. Just another way that we're able to individualize those services for people. Just for time's sake, I'm not going to go over this list, but off to the right is just a list of kind of general topics that can be discussed during the counseling and guidance process. And I will make sure that we get the PowerPoint shared if Shayna doesn't, just so that you guys have that list as well. Then we have career and employment services. So these are provided with the goal of helping the person obtain or maintain employment. So lots of times it involves assistance with helping to find a job, which could be resume building, helping with applications, teaching about advocacy, working with employers on accommodations and things like that. So those are kinds of the things that help the person to become employed, but then we don't want to just be like, okay, well, you got a job, good luck, hope it goes okay. So we also have a set of services that helps the person maintain the job. And so we have the follow along, which is just kind of check-ins with the individual and the employer to make sure that things are going okay and to provide supports as needed. We also have job coaching. Again, with COVID, this is not happening quite as much, but that's where somebody can go in and help the person learn the tasks of their job if needed. We have options for customized employment, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it just for time, but just kind of a different approach for those individuals who maybe have some more significant barriers to employment. We also help with self-employment, and again, those post-employment services that we can provide if somebody's case is closed successfully, but they need a little bit of help maintaining their employment after their case is closed. So these are just those core career and employment services. But again, because we individualize everything, these can be supplemented with other support services as needed. So then we have our training services. So the goal with all of these is just to help the person gain skills or experiences needed to help enter employment. These could be basic work skills or more advanced technical training. So we have an on-the-job training program. We have employment skills program, which for those of you that are familiar with Project Skills, it's kind of like Project Skills for adults, where the work site is set up and the wage is paid through the state, again, just to kind of gain experience. We have South Dakota Vocational Resources. We can assist with non-FAFSA certification and training courses, and then basic employment skill building through DLR trainings and Career Learning Center trainings. We can also provide disability support services. So these would be things like assistive technology, vehicle modifications, services related to low vision and blindness, services relating to hearing loss and deafness. So these would be services that are provided to help remove disability related and barriers to employment. Sorry, having a hard time talking today, but these are, again, just to remove those barriers or minimize those barriers so they don't have the same level of impact on the person's employment. We then have pre-ET services. So these are to help ensure that our individuals who are considered students with disabilities receive the same experiences related to employment as their peers. We do have federal requirements to provide 5 core services to this group of individuals that we serve, and this includes job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences, counseling on opportunities for enrollment, workplace readiness training, and instructions on self-advocacy. And we have several different programs and are kind of constantly evolving this part of our services to meet these needs. So we do virtual job shadowing. We have a program that's called eTrack that is pretty cool to teach just kind of some basic work skills, project skills, project search, and then some 18 to 21 transition programs that help build employment-related skills and some independent living skills before those students age out of services. We can also assist with post-secondary. Funding and support for this is dependent on several factors. People have to meet financial need. There's usually some discussion about goals and the appropriateness of goals and things like that. But if it is determined that support can be provided, it can look a lot of different ways just depending on the person's needs. It can include assistance with tuition fees, books and supplies, room and board, assistive technology, accommodation assistance, and just again, ongoing counseling and guidance to make sure that things are going well for the person. Other support services, so I kind of referenced these before, but these would be things that if a person meets financial need and other requirements, we can help with some other services to help them to be successful, again, with the goal of just removing barriers for them. So just some common examples would be like assisting with uniforms when somebody gets a job. If there's a need for a specific uniform or certain kinds of clothing, we can assist with that. Phone cards to help facilitate communication with employers before they get employed, or some transportation options, just depending on the area that they live in, if transportation is an issue for them. I've referenced financial need a couple times. There are several services that require financial need determination before we can provide services. And we determine that in general, there's a whole process that goes with it, but it's in general, the total annual income minus 185% of the poverty level based on the person's family size. And so, that's something that we communicate to clients throughout the process, or if a service is brought up, we work with them to do that financial need process. But there just are some that we have to make that determination before we can just provide financial assistance. This is not required if the individual is on Social Security. Again, kind of the same thing with eligibility. We assume that if somebody's on Social Security, they're probably not going to meet financial need requirements. So they do not have to do this process in order to receive those services. Another thing that we do frequently is look at comparable benefits. So these are just other sources of funding that could cover part or all costs of a service. Just kind of a rule of thumb is we like to try and be the payer of last resort in most cases. So just some examples of things that we look at is insurance for medical type of things and financial aid for post-secondary. So we just like those things to cover as much as they can before we would step in and pay for some of those services. So then I will move into providers. This is the second part of my presentation. But basically the Rehab Act allows for us to utilize providers to provide direct services to clients. We just can't be everywhere at once. So we contract with providers to help provide some of those services that the VR staff themselves can't get to. We continue to be involved with those providers at different levels, just depending on the services that are provided and things like that. We work with a lot of different providers to meet different needs. In the event that there are multiple providers available that would provide the same kind of service, we like to give the client the option of who they want to work with. Again, just part of that informed choice, want to make sure that people are able to get the services that they need in the way that works best for them. So I'll go over kind of who some of our providers are, but one of our most common ones is career and employment services that would do like the job searching, the job coaching, the follow along that I talked about earlier. We contract with them to do those kinds of things with clients. So provider services, just some of those common services that we contract with providers for are employment preparation services, job placement services, job support services, independent living services, connection with mental health centers for mental health supports, deaf services, traumatic brain injury services, and blind and low vision services. And again, in the interest of time, I was going to bring up the service descriptions for providers on the DHS website, but I'm not going to do that today. You can go ahead and check that out if you have any questions about it after the presentation. And then provider rates. We have contracts with our providers that we put in place that determine kind of the requirements of our providers and requirements of us in that service process. There are CPT rates that we follow for medical services. Other rates are established just in different ways as those services come up. And again, same thing, I'm not going to go into the rates. I was going to bring them up and show you, but I will just let you guys check those out. I have the link here that will take you to the rate sheet on the DHS website. How providers are paid. So kind of the process for paying providers is that we request that providers submit reports narrating the work that's done with or on behalf of the client. And then we have them submit bills based on set rates established by the division for each service. Our hourly services are billed for in 15-minute increments, and package services are generally billed at the completion or the end of a service. It varies a little bit depending on the service that's being provided, but kind of best practice is to submit a monthly bill with a monthly report on the progress or the work that was completed with the client each month. And we do have some standards for documentation and billing, which are also outlined in the service description for providers document that I had linked to on the previous slide. And then common partner relationships. So we have partners and providers. So we have a group of providers that we work with, that we have contracts with, that we have a fee for service plan set up with these entities. But then we also have some partners that we refer to and we receive referrals from. And again, depending on the needs of the client and the situation, we can help pay for some services or partner to pay for services that the person might be receiving at that point. So I went through that really, really, really fast for time's sake. Are there any questions that we got?
I just want to add a couple things. Jordan did a great job on to there. And Centers for Independent Living are considered providers. That's why we had Jordan cover through that. And I will be talking a little bit about when a joint client of IL and VR. But I think one thing too for the Center for Independent Living staff to understand is people with disability field, individual disabilities talk to each other. And just because one person got a computer from VR or got their college assisted with VR doesn't mean that could be for everyone. It all depends on their employment goal, depends on financial need, depends on the services necessary or appropriate onto there. So I think that's sometimes where people get confused is because if one person got a computer, everyone gets a computer, and it's not always that way. Is there questions for Jordan on an area that she covered? Otherwise, I'll kind of cover this next section, and I just put it in the chat a minute ago, and I'm going to share the screen here too. We have a document on the Vision Rehab Services website. If you go to the left-hand side, it's called Provider Resources, and you'll see a document there called Service Descriptions for providers. And we do have one section in there for independent living evaluation and services. And this is what, I don't think I got it updated in the document. This is what I will be putting in it shortly after this training. Because we got together, the supervisors and DRS and SBDI, and we had Jen Red Bear and Matt on the call. We talked about what do we do when a person is a VR client and an independent living client. And there's sometimes VR has purchased the services from the Center for Independent Living because it was necessary for the employment goal. The person needed to go shopping for clothes for work, for an interview. And that would have been appropriate for us to fund the service. And, or there's times a person needs a alarm clock that vibrates the bed or flashing lights, whatever, to make sure that they get out of bed to get to work. You know, those things we have done independent living evaluations and purchased those, and even equipment at a time. And what we decide, and it's gotten confusing for VR staff and IL staff. You know, there's two pots of money, and which one should pay for the service. So what we described into here is if they're joint client and the IL system can serve them, the IL system will count it as their billable time. They will record it on their case management system as the time for doing, whether it's independent living training or helping a person with a ramp or whatever it may have been. They'll count that on their billable time and won't bill VR for that service. But if the person needs equipment, then the VR system will pay for the equipment. And a good example was, I think we had one in Yankton here like last week. I was having a conversation with that. The counselor and the IL specialist wanted to split the cost of the equipment. It was a wheelchair lift for a person. It was for independent living and for VR and for employment also. And on that, I said, you know, VR will pay for the lift, the equipment. And but the IL staff person time and helping make arrangements, they will bill that time through the IL system. So that's kind of one example into there. And so we just wanted to clarify that because there's been some inconsistency on that during the past few years. I'm trying to see if there's anything with chat. I don't know. I don't know if there's questions on that specifically or not, but that's kind of what Matt and Jen Redbear, the district supervisors, had a discussion, and we thought that would be the best way to do it. And again, this will be in the VR provider description of services that I'll be putting out here, updated here this week. Okay, let me knock this one down, stop sharing that. And I'd like to go into where we're going to do breakout sessions. I think we're pretty well close to in time, and I'm going to bring up the document onto this. Help me with it. Breakout.
Hey Bernie, it's Jen. Can you give me like 5 minutes for ADLS? You skipped me back there.
Oh, I am so sorry, Jen. You're right, I did.
So let me turn my video on here.
I apologize for that, Jen.
Nope, that's okay. I just let you go there. You know, in conservation of time, I just want to go through a few things on the ADLS waiver. So the Assistive Daily Living Services waiver, it's one of the 4 waiver programs operated by the Department of Human Services. The ADLS waiver is specific because it is situated within the Department of Rehab Services. I just got some high level stuff I'm going to share with you guys real quick, and then we can keep moving on here. So participants need to be at least 18 years old. They need to be Medicaid eligible, and then they need to have a qualifying substantial limitation to all 4 limbs. So all 4 limbs have to be affected by their disability, and then the other part of that is they need to require assistance with an activity of daily living, dressing, bathing, meals, any types of those services. We offer a variety of different services: personal attendant services, nursing, specialized medical equipment supplies, vehicle modifications, home modifications, consumer prep, and then case management services. We have 4 providers who cover the state of South Dakota. ILC is also an ADLS provider, home care services, right at home, and preferred home health. We work very closely with the Centers for Independent Living. So our environmental accessibility adaptations and our vehicle modifications, we work directly with the Centers for Independent Living on those. We would provide a referral to the center, and they would help with gathering the quotes that are needed as outlined within the ADLS policy and submitting those. They would also be the billing agent for those. So the department would reimburse them on those services, and then they would reimburse the actual contractor who provided those services. That's just a really quick overview of the ADLS waiver. There's a variety of other things that we can do. If you guys have anyone you think that might be eligible for waiver services and need assistance with a personal attendant service, get a hold of me and I can work on getting applications and things out to them to facilitate the assessment process. Does anybody have any questions on the waiver? Bernie, you're on mute still.
Okay, apologize for overlooking that. And the reason we had it on there because ADLS does cross over both of the VR and IL programs. And so we are working with someone on that funding stream also at times. So let me bring up the assignment. For the breakout session. And Shayna is splitting us into groups. Shayna, I don't know if we could cut down the time to 10 minutes if that's possible, but there's 10 groups. And Matt is not going to be the lead person in group number 6. I think that's going to be, it's not Colleen, Carol Rockwell is going to take that role. Okay. But basically, you're going to have 2 simple questions to have discussion on. How can SILS assist with VR clients, and how can VR assist with IL clients? You know, they're kind of 2 separate questions, but I think you need to take both perspectives on to there. Shayna is splitting this into groups. There's about 10 groups. And then if the group leaders will either take responsibility or assign a recorder to summarize the discussion recommendation, and then come back to the larger group. And then also, if you had notes, if you send it to Jen Lewis and myself afterwards. So at this time, I'm going to have Shayna start putting this into groups.
Once I split you guys into breakout rooms, you won't be able to see Bernie's screen anymore. So I did post the questions in the chat box, so you can refer to them. And if you guys wouldn't all mind turning your videos on if possible, so that you can participate in the discussion a little bit easier.
Zoom meeting. Breakout rooms.
Hello, Mike Webb.
If you're joined by phone, you won't be able to break. Or is anybody on the phone right now? I can put you into a room. I don't really know how it works, so let me try it here and I'll see what happens. Steve, were you able to get into a room?
No, I'm not right now.
Did you get a message that said that asked you to join room?
Yeah, I did, and I clicked on it. I seen Webb for a minute. Now there's nobody.
Okay, 1 second. For the rest of you that haven't joined in a room yet, I'm going to move you to a different room and you'll have to accept it again, and that should help you join.
Vicki Myros, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yep. This is
Oh,
Shayna.
okay. Hey, Vicki.
No,
all
oh,
right.
sorry,
Oh,
this is
is-
Shayna.
Oh, Shana, you know, we have two people that we couldn't hear, Vicki Myros and another person with a phone. So then I called into the number just to see if that would help.
Okay, who is this? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. This is Vicki Nelson, and I'm Group 7, and I was calling two of our participants, Vicki Myros, and then another one that is just a phone and no screen or picture. We have 5 of us on that can see and hear one another: Deb Brinkman and Amanda Jones and Tricia
Okay,
Plummer,
hold on.
myself.
I'm gonna jump in your room. Hold on a second.
Okay, thank you. Jump in our room.
Hey, Shayna, you brought your puppies too.
Hello.
I was
Okay.
trying to get Vicki
Vicky-
Myros.
Yeah, Vicki, are you on? I suppose you probably can't say. Can you put in the chat if you are joining by phone to talk, and what your phone number is?
Vicki Myros. Not Nelson, right?
Well, I think you guys can just get discussed on what you have, and I will try to figure this out if I can get a hold of Vicki Myros.
All right, didn't want to leave them out, so sorry. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep.
All right, so got
Be our client. Here's Vicki.
Okay, it looks like everyone's getting back together here. We'll kind of go through a group ordered by number. Start with group number 1. If you would just give a quick summary. That was Laura, are you there?
I am, Bernie. We had quite a few of Aberdeen people and a couple IL reps or IL specialists and Rapid City and one SBVI person. So talking about how IL services can assist VR clients, we talked about passing referrals back and forth, of course, based on conversations and who kind of intercepts that person first. We talked about the ILC doing that summer transition program. And then also the we'll just do it mentality and maybe not jumping to that assumption, but to let each other know what timelines are in mind. So if they need a mod application and it needs to happen like yesterday, you know, ILC may not be able to get that done as quickly as we want it, or we might take that on the VR side. So just that open communication. Also the benefit that IL providers can go in person now and see people versus VR's, you know, a little more reserved yet in that aspect. The flip side of that, we talked quick about, again, passing referrals back and forth. If we have a file closed on either end, or they might not be eligible for voc rehab in general, that maybe that referral to IL to provide some job search support would be beneficial. So that's something I know I hadn't necessarily thought about before, for some applications and interview prep. And then also just the broader conversation. I don't know if Eric and Jordan are still on the provider needs in rural areas, for different contractors or job coaches or things like that. So that is something the IL side also sees, as well as the VR side of more rural provider needs. And I think that did it, unless my group had anything else to add.
Okay, I'm going to keep it moving because we only have 10 minutes left here. Jenny, for group 2.
Things that we talked about, what IL can do for VR clients. You know, we talked about those independent living skills, maybe some bus trainings, and we just really left it open that we are willing to brainstorm and collaborate when those challenges come up, such as if it's a transportation issue. We might not necessarily have the answer or find the answer, but we would love to be part of that team, to find out, get creative and find different ways to serve our clients and participant. The other thing that we talked about in terms of how can VR assist with IL clients, is really, we kind of thought that VR has kind of that in with those school districts. They're already actively really working with them, being invited to those IEP meetings, working on those employment goals. So an invite to have VR invite ILC, of course, with the permission from the school and the student, but to kind of, I guess you can say, reintroduce IL services back into that transition service of an IEP, where we looked at the schools focusing more on that academic part and how ILC can really help with those IL skills, those community living skills, to get them ready for that transition.
Okay. Group number 3 was the one I was leading. I'm not going to cover some of the same stuff that the other ones did, but add a couple things. I think where the centers can help is, you know, helping the person move into an apartment when they get a work paycheck, helping them with how to learn how to budget their money when they get a paycheck, assisting that person finding affordable housing once they get employment and start living more independently. I think another thing is where VR can assist the IL program is we do have benefit specialists on contract that will help with advising how their paycheck is going to impact their housing and Social Security. We've helped at times with relocation expenses if a person meets financial needs, if they have to move for the job. And of course, equipment being purchased if it's related to employment. And I think both groups have just, there needs to be more communication, coordination on joint cases back and forth. So group 4 is Jordan.
Okay, so we talked about, we had a couple of newer counselors on our group. And so they had just mentioned that it was nice to know or have a better idea of what everybody can do to support clients. We discussed that, for VR, referring some of those more like case management type duties, like filling out applications for different services and things like that would be kind of a nice way to partner with services with VR and IL. One counselor mentioned that they really like the option of the one-to-one services that IL can provide to clients. And then we had just kind of a broad discussion about the importance of maintaining communication between the VR staff and the IL staff, because you're going to have unique situations that come up for clients and can, with a release, brainstorm different ways that you can utilize a combination of the VR and the IL services to meet clients' needs depending on what they have going on. And I believe that is it.
Thank you. Jen Rittner, Group 5.
Okay, we discussed the informal way that we do our referrals to VR and to IL services, and that would be out here in the Rapid area. I know the Pierre and Spearfish areas, they have monthly meetings. That's something that we should really consider out here in the Rapid City area with VR and WRIL to possibly start doing that. That I didn't make that suggestion in there, but I was thinking about that here because we were talking about the different things that we were able to that we assist when they send us a referral and whatnot. So we've just decided they want to keep the informal referrals going. So it was that's about it, Bernie.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Carol Rockwell, your Group 6.
Yes. So we talked about some of the same things as some of the other groups, of course, but also just talked about basically the importance of making the referrals back and forth. We don't necessarily, the IL folks don't know everything that the VR people can do, and VR doesn't know everything that IL can do. So make the referral and then allow the individual agency to determine eligibility and determine what services they can provide and to support that individual. Also, our VR folks that mentioned that the importance of reaching out after we make a referral. If we have a release of information, reach back out to the VR counselor, because sometimes it will take some time between the application and the eligibility, and that VR counselor may forget that IL is involved. So in order to maintain collaboration and communication, it doesn't hurt for that IL person to reach back out to the VR counselor, let them know that they're still involved and that they can be part of the team. And so I think then we wanted to mention that we just so appreciate all the services that both agencies can provide.
Okay, thank you. Vicki Nelson, Group 6.
Yeah, our group had 2 service to blind and visually impaired rehab teachers in our group, and they mainly serve elderly adults in the community. And so that was the focus mainly of our group conversation. And the rehab teachers indicated that the centers can really help with like emergency alert information, safety information, assistance in finding appropriate housing, of course, and possibly even an assisted living situation that they can help find, helping with any kind of paperwork whatsoever. So many different types of things that the elderly would possibly have difficulty applying for or doing paperwork for. And then particularly services for elderly living in the rural communities, including like transportation situations and those types of things, getting to doctor's appointments, that kind of thing. And then of course the VR, they certainly help the VR clients. We talked briefly about the usual things that many of the groups have already talked about: finding appropriate housing, shopping for clothing for work, budgeting and planning when they get their first paycheck, food preparation and nutrition, how it may affect their work if they don't have those things in place, excuse me, transportation for work, and then the various IL skills that would affect a person going to work. And then we also mentioned peer mentoring groups and talking to different peers about how work affects their life and, you know, personal issues that may be happening that affect their work. So that was about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Group 8 is Colleen.
Yeah, thanks, Bernie. We just talked about the need for maybe enhanced communication, that we keep in better contact with each other if we are both dealing with the same individual. You know, whether it's through email or whether it's through, one of the suggestions was a quarterly meeting, bringing the team together every quarter, kind of like an IEP, and saying, okay, here's where we're at, where do we want to be before we meet again. But just having really much better communication going both ways through releases of information.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. Group 9 is Sylvia.
All right, so we talked about quite a bit of what everyone else had discussed, but in particular, we discussed the importance of how ILCs can help with transportation and arranging those services and helping our clients, especially who need that additional assistance when it comes to transportation. We also discussed the importance of advocacy services. And so we had one of our newer counselors was involved in our meeting, and he described just how important it was for ILC to be there and assistance with not just the application, but also with the organization of records. They also described lining up evals and getting some of that medical information, which can be very time consuming as part of that process as well. And and we also discussed housing and then other various living skills that are going to be a benefit to our clients.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. Jen Lewis, Group 10.
So in Group 10, we talked about a lot of the same stuff you guys did. One of the main things that we focused on was assisting participants to work on the IL skill of budgeting. And the other one was making sure that the staff know each other. So doing like a meet and greet between the IL specialist and the VR counselors, sharing contacts, and then everybody being fully staffed is helping now.
Okay, thank you. The way we first arranged this training and planning, I wondered how are we going to fill 2 hours, but we could have gone longer. And I want to thank the presenters for their portion of it. Shana sent out the PowerPoints. And if you have any questions or need any documents, feel free to contact Jen Lewis, myself, or Shana. Also thank Shana for helping with the Zoom arrangements. I guess one final comment I have is for the VR and IL system both to realize that we both serve people with disabilities. They may have a different outcome, whether it's independent living or employment, but we both serve groups of people with disabilities. We're both in the same federal act, same federal legislation. And it's just important that we do coordinate and communicate in our areas between VR and YIL to be more successful with both programs. Because I do see a number of people who fail with their employment because of their independent living problems. The apartment, the housing, or whatever it may be. So it's just important to utilize both services and coordinate services. With that, I think we're done unless there's any further questions. We kind of went over time a little bit. You can email any of us if you have questions. Shana put the CEU form out there if you like continuing education credits. You need to fill it out. I think you need to fill that out irregardless. is what my understanding is. So please fill it out, and I'm going to thank everyone for participating today.